Can everybody hear me?
Somebody's not. You're mute. Okay, go ahead. Try it again.
I think it's,
I think it's the same.
yeah, it's Matthews, something like
After
that.
the certified card.
Is this working now? I heard it from that side.
Wherever your volume is, make sure you turn it all the way down.
No, I think you're good. I think it's,
Trying again. I can hear it from that side.
I'm unmuted and I'm over there.
That's coming from the other sheet.
Am I muted?
Let me see. Trying again. Okay.
Maybe I think I'm hardest thing all night.
Alrighty. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Shearer. I'm the president of the Albany Public Library Board of Trustees, and I'm going to call our August Board of Trustees meeting to order. First order of business, I'm going to go to our secretary, Jennifer Terra, and ask for a report on attendance of trustees.
Hi, Sarah. So
Thank you, Jenna. And that trustee excused.
is Tom.
Thank you. Next, I'll go to Rebecca Delgazo for public comment.
Okay, let's try this again. Public comment. We did receive 2 public comments. Both are included in the agenda. First public comment was received on July 14th by patron. Hold on, my screen's too small. Katria Foster. And she basically loves Pine Hills, and she loves the book selection, and environment is very welcoming. And she wanted to thank Albany Public Library for extending the mask requirements at the library. The second public comment was received on July 18th, and that's by Andrea Reno. And again, they wanted to voice their support for the mask policy. It helps them feel safe when they bring their children to the library. That is the extent of our public comments that we received. If anybody from the public does wish to make a public comment, they are asked to email publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org. That's publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org. You could also leave a voicemail that is constantly monitored at 518-290-6905. No one will answer it. It is just a voicemail. We ask that either way that you leave a public comment, we ask that you identify your name and your street address. And there are 2 times during the meeting that public comments are read. One's in the beginning and one is just before adjournment. So we will be monitoring that.
Thank you, Rebecca. Moving on to our next agenda item, we are going to the consent agenda. There are 2 items in our consent agenda for this month, last month's meeting minutes and the operating check register. I'll ask for a motion in a second, and then we can go see if there are any questions. So if I could get a motion from anybody, Sarah Dallas.
Second.
And Dr. Robinson. Are there any questions or any further discussion on either item in the consent agenda? Seeing none, we can go to board docs and place our votes. And the motion carries. Next on our agenda is our financial reports. Adam, if there's anything you want to walk us through or bring our attention to?
Sure. So I'll just go through these briefly here. So the reports this month cover June 2021, which was the final month of the 2020-21 fiscal year. As it stands today, the 2021 expenditures total is $9,478,830, which was over 96% of our modified 2021 budget of $9,918,907. Our 2021 revenue currently totals $9,789,486, which was 99% of our modified revenue budget of $9,918,907. So the resulting excess of revenue over expenditures today totals $310,576, which is about 3% of the total budget. And I did just want to point out that the modified payroll and related costs budget was only about 1% off the actual totals, so it's very close. And it was the remaining areas of the budget that were more significantly underspent. Some of the more notable lines would be IT software, IT hardware, professional services, custodial supplies, publicity and printing, and periodicals. And just please note that these numbers are not final and are there may be an adjustment as a result of the upcoming audit, which is next week. And also just a quick note that the last 38 checks on the check register were added yesterday, in case you didn't see them last week. So that's it. If you have any questions, happy to try and answer them.
Sorry, I'm dealing with multiple screens here. I have a question, Adam. It was actually something Tom emailed because he couldn't make it tonight. He was wondering on the capital fund report, what is the $56,000 in New York State grant revenue? Is it unused money from a previous year's grant?
Sorry, just let me pull the report up here. No, that was actual revenue we received from DLD during this fiscal year. I don't recall which project it was for off the top of my head.
Okay, but it was received. Thank you.
Maybe from 20. We clo- we
Any other questions on the any of the financial reports? Seeing none, thank you, Adam. Moving on to committee and liaison reports, trustees reporting out and upcoming events. If anybody has any interactions with the library over the last month they would like to share.
And also, someone from the public also approached me in reference to when the libraries are going to open back on Saturdays. And I was in another event, and he just came up, and I was like, "How do you know? How do you know I know information about the library?" He's like, "Oh, I look at the every month I attend the Zoom monthly meetings." I was like, "Oh, that's great. Okay." All right. And then my doctor also, when I went to my doctor, she was like, "Aren't you somebody?" Really? You know that too? So I was like, okay. So the word is out. People are looking at the website and the information. So that's good. And I was glad that we did open back up on Saturdays.
That actually reminded me, I forgot. I talked to a coworker about the book sales that the Friends and Foundation are putting on because I'm on the Friends and Foundation email list. So my coworker's on the library list, and so she hadn't seen it. So I was able to relay that information to her about book sales because she was telling me about visiting used bookstores over the weekends, and she hadn't heard about our book sales yet. So I think she went and joined the Friends and Foundation email list after that. If everybody is set, Arlene, I see the ALS liaison report. Was there a meeting this past month?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, so as I was saying, we met on July 14th, and it was a pretty robust meeting. We started out with approving 2 new members, 2 new trustees, and giving oath of office to them as well as people who were renewing their terms. We Our annual report was released and mailed to trustee members, and I will look to see to get copies to all of you because it tells a story of how we really did embrace the unexpected, this year, and how we did pretty good. The lease agreement with the sole tenant at 28 Essex Street, their lease has expired or is expiring October 31st, and they're going to be looking for a new tenant. So, um, and we were asked to consider paying off the existing mortgage on that property. The Cohoes Library closed temporarily due to some problems with its physical plant. And the Upper Hudson Library System staff, worked with them, the city, and others to make sure that they would be okay. So that is work still in progress. But, it happened. They worked to make sure that people were not going to be fined because, as the library was being inaccessible. So there was work being done there. They are looking at getting quotes for contractors to work on their properties. There's some safety concerns that have to be addressed, so they're working on that. And they've continued to be active in terms of providing support to member libraries regarding specific projects, local issues, working with boards and staff. And they gave us a list of specific libraries that they worked with this during that cycle. Cheney, Manans, Post&Kill, Valley Falls, and Voorheesville. The Anti-Racism Task Force is busy. They got projects, and so is the Adult and Outreach Committee, very active committees. For among staff. For trustees, the nominating committee presented a slate of officers that and that was approved by the board. And the finance committee, following the presentation and approval of the treasurer's report and purchase journal for May and June, you know, started a very robust conversation with the rest of us about what to do with regard to the mortgage, which is about $250,000 that was going to be a balloon payment that was going to be due the end of this month. We decided to approve the recommendation. And so that was pretty much it. But it was a pretty robust conversation about, if that was really the best thing to do, and we decided that it was. And that was it. Meeting was adjourned.
Thank you, Arlene. Does anybody have any questions for Arlene or comments about the meeting? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the executive committee. So the executive committee met on Tuesday, August 3rd. We had a full meeting as well. We approved our executive committee description. We discussed a couple of board priorities for the year, including filling the treasurer vacancy, as well as planning the annual board retreat for the fall. I know we haven't had one in a while due to COVID, so we're looking to have one in the fall if possible. And then the next three items will actually all be under new business. Proposed strategic plan framework. We looked at what Scott's proposing. Like I said, that will be under new business. We looked at cost changes with the updated CDC guidelines. And we set the committee assignments for the 2021-2022 year on our board. And I can take any questions on that. But like I said, the last three items will be under new business. All right. Next on the agenda is the director's report.
Okay, sorry about that. So the library has begun providing in-person programming again. This included Tai Chi, musical performances, outdoor story times, and a visit from a llama. We also had goats this month as well. Pine Hills and Delaware are partnering with the Albany Housing Authority to provide free grab-and-go lunches for kids and teens on select days this summer. Human Resources continues to actively recruit to fill staffing positions. IT recently did, and we have a new IT manager. IT recently did a network vulnerability scan, which was completed, and they did find a major issue, which they remedied. Staff here at the Washington Avenue branch have received multiple comments from patrons that the branch has been a more welcoming, safe, and comfortable atmosphere. We love hearing that. We love sharing that. And also, incidents were low across the district for July. There were 3 verbal. There were verbal threats, 2 threats of physical violence, and 9 non-violent incidents. That's actually very good for us in the summer. Monthly statistics, circulation increased by 101% compared to this time last year. Should be noted that box circulation beat the 3-year average. So when we make comparisons, we actually, one of the metrics that we compare against isn't how we did last year, it's how we did to the average of 3 years prior. We think that kind of takes into consideration fluctuations. And Bach at this point is beating that 3-year average. It's becoming our highest circulating branch, which is wonderful to see. We did see a slight decrease in program participation. Some of that has to do with when we have in-person programming, we have to limit the amount of people that can come to the program. So Zoom program can have 30 people, but an in-person program will have a smaller amount of people who are allowed to come. Informational items memo. I've attached the engagement letter with Marvin and Co., who we selected as our auditor to audit the 2020-21 fiscal year. The audit will take place the week of August 16th. That's correct, Adam? The letter is important for all trustees to read. It gives a good outline of what the audit does and the purpose of the audit and the responsibilities. UHLS has launched a new mobile app. We are soft launching it. So in other words, we wanted to give it a couple weeks before we start publicizing it. There are some things that need to be worked out with the app, including self-checkout, which originally I was under the assumption that every library had to do it, but we can actually opt out, which we have done because there's been discussion about self-checkout with the board. So we've asked for it to be turned off. We will want to have a conversation in the future if we start getting feedback about it. On July 23rd, the attached document was sent to me by the New York State Division of Library Development. This is a reassurance. They were asking for reassurance that our designated Upper Hudson Library, Central Library, which is this branch, the Washington Avenue branch, would be required to 55 hours per week starting September 1st. I did reply to them, yes, we will. We had planned to. We've put in our draft application for our UHLS 2022 construction fund projects, which we're ahead. They're due at the end of this month. We're usually late, so I'm really proud. This year we're there. A few extra paperwork, but it goes through the Upper Hudson Library Systems Services Committee, then the full board for approval. So they don't need all of the paperwork done yet. The 3 forms with signatures in blue and all of those things. The library is drafting an agreement. You'll see it as new business next month for the space that the Friends and Foundation of APL use. It's a user agreement like you've seen with other organizations like PEG. And trustees are asked to read and sign policies that are listed. These are the annual signatures that are needed, and please sign that paperwork. I believe Becky's made additional copies. We need to have them signed at the end every year on an annual basis. There were some trustee questions from Tom and Sarah that I wanted to note in my report. Trustee Dallas was concerned, will APL be able to meet the open hours September 1st since there was only one new hire? Good question. That report reflects hiring during the month of July, not August. I've been signing a lot of hiring forms, so we should have enough staff to be able to make the hours for September 1st. And this gives us the month of August to do the training that we need to do. And then there was a question from both Trustee Dallas and Trustee McCarthy. What is ID New York? It's a headache and a giant pain in the tuchus. According to the state, it's an online service that enables citizens, state and local government employees, businesses to participate in government online services. We believe this is a reaction to how many identities were stolen over the course of the pandemic. Someone tried to get unemployment insurance under my name in Michigan. So they now have this extra website. It's an online portal and it takes a lot. You have to send an ID, you have to send a picture of your ID, you have to send a picture of yourself. It's really hands-on, and our staff have just, and I want to share with the trustees that it takes a lot of digital literacy skills to do. And it's a considerable amount of hands-on assistance and can be cumbersome. Also, I know that another central library in the area and a few other libraries in the area are not providing hands-on assistance when it comes to computers. Just come in the door, here's the computer, that's it. So I believe we're getting traffic from there as well. But this is another decision made, no offense to people at the table, at a state level that is now impacting us in a negative way, just because it's taking so much work for us to do and no one gave us a heads up. And that's it for my report. I'll open the floor to questions and concerns.
Are there any questions for Scott? Did I hear something over there?
So I had a question, because I also emailed you in reference to, I don't know if this is the time, but I know you answered it as far as the 85 million that the city was getting. Is there, you said no for a lack of trying, we weren't at the table. Was there anything that the trustees can do to see that we are at the table? Because a lot of other organizations, which is, just as important, but I think the library is a bedrock in any municipality, and it should be respected as so.
So this is in reference to the money that was the $85 million that was given to the city by the federal government. No, we've tried, I've reached out, I've asked about it. If trustees could talk to local elected officials and just give them a heads up that, hey, the library is not at the table in these discussions. It hasn't been asked to the table. Director has reached out to individuals involved and almost got no response. So, we understand that we are often looked at by other organizations for having a lot of resources. That has to do with the fact that we manage our resources really, really well. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm not sure it's because we're not a part of city government, but also not a nonprofit. But if anybody on this board could reach out to elected officials and say, we would absolutely love to be at the table and a part of the conversation. And not necessarily looking for funds, but just being a voice there to kind of talk about what's going on in the city.
I was, thinking that as well, is because mostly all the common council, our branches are in their area. So they should be advocating for us as well.
And I'll just read a couple comments in that Tom emailed as well. I apologize for being on my phone. I'm using it as another screen, so I don't have to switch back and forth on my computer. Tom also said, it's great to see the community support specialist being utilized by the public. I'm glad we have this service. And he also said, as a general comment, I think the programming that we have had lately has been great, and the upcoming programs are great as well. Off the record at Box sounds very fun. Does anybody else have any additional questions or comments in response to Scott's report? All right, thank you, Scott. Moving on to new business. The first item we have under new business is the curatorial agreement between Alpaca and Friends and Foundation.
So the Albany Public Library hosts a biannual art exhibition. These shows are underwritten by the Albany Public Library Foundation. This year we did them at both Bach and Arbor Hill. There are those beautiful window, which I love. I'm going to be sad when they come down. So this is a new agreement. It's a one-year contract. It's between the foundation, the Albany Public Library, and the gallery, who's been the curator, and we think are doing a fantastic job. This would be to bring the art show back to Pine Hills, to do one in the fall and one in the spring. The contract says October. Sarah pointed out that my memo says September,
Other way
October, September. Rebecca's fixed it. So the agreement would start in September because they are thinking about moving the art show a few months earlier so that maybe that the opening can be outside so everybody feels a little bit safer.
Does anybody have any questions on the agreement before we go to a motion? We need to approve the contract, right?
So we need to approve. I'll defer to legal. How do we often do this with agreements? You have specific language. Okay.
Use motion, it's there.
Any further questions on the agreement before we look for a motion to approve? Sarah? Question or motion, sorry.
Motion.
Motion. Thank you. Brigitte, second.
Yes.
Any further questions or comments? I'll just wait a few seconds. And when it comes up, we can all go to board docs and vote. And the motion carries. Next item under new business is the UHLS plan of service.
So as we've all discovered over the last year, the Washington Avenue branch is the central library, and APL is a part of every 4 years, UHLS has to provide a plan of service, basically a strategic plan, and give it and send it to DLD. It needs to be approved by several advisory committees at UHLS and then by the UHLS board. But in between that, this board also has to agree to this plan of service. It's attached as a document. I will say that I'm part of the Central Library Advisory Committee, a group of directors who represent small and large libraries across the system. As a member of the committee, I have vetted this several times, spoken to my colleagues who are other central library directors, and I voted to approve the plan. There have been no significant changes from the previous plan, and this is very conservative in the face of possible changes to commissioner regulations we believe are coming in the future, which we believe are coming in the future because it's basically been stated by the state librarian that regulations are going to change. So remember that we have some education law that we have to follow at a state level when it comes to multiple things with libraries, but also as a central library. Then on top of that, there's commissioner regulations. So the commissioner has decided this is their interpretation of the law and that needs to be followed. In the face of kind of everything that's went on before COVID and discussion about ebooks, but now with COVID, there's a lot of conversations about changing those commissioner regulations. So I think Tim and the committee did a good job of creating a plan of service that isn't going to conflict with the changes that we are advocating for and believe are possible down the road.
Sarah.
Help me out here. Are we approving the central library part of the Upper Hudson Plan of Service? Or are we approving the Upper Hudson Plan of Service?
I believe we're approving the Upper Hudson Plan of Service because we're part of it.
Okay, I'm unmuted. So we're approving the Upper Hudson's Plan of Service, not just the central library component of the Upper Hudson Plan of Service.
Yes.
Any other questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the plan of service. Dr. Robinson,
Yes, I would like to make a motion to accept the proposed 2022-26.
thank you. Matthew, second. Thank you. Sorry, my mic is throwing me here.
Sarah and Rebecca.
I was just going to suggest that, I noticed in the last motion too, but instead of accept, you might want to just do adopt or approve as the word, either one.
Arlene, please take your roll.
And the motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Our next order of business is the proposed strategic plan.
So the library created a diversity and equity task force, which was goal 3, objective 1, tactic 1 of our last and current strategic plan. Tangible Development was hired as a facilitator for this initiative that was passed by this body. After a short pause during the pandemic, the task force was convened and substantial work was done over the last year. Efforts included focus groups, discussion groups, polling of frontline staff. The group put together a substantive and extensive set of goals. The facilitator will present this work to the board in September. The group shared its work with the administration in June, and the services committee, that is heads of branches, the assistant director, a head of community partnerships, myself, and the public information officer, makes up the services committee, have been reviewing it for the last month. And it is our opinion that the work done on diversity, equity, and inclusion was so in-depth that it could be adopted as our next strategic plan. We're not asking for a vote at this meeting. There's a lot of information here. So, and Tangible Development will be at our next meeting to discuss the work. But we really wanted to put it in front of the board just to start looking at it, asking questions. Tom had some good questions because he viewed it as the executive committee as well. So I'll go over those, and also a question from Trustee Dallas as well. How does this meet the plan of service requirement? Be community-based. The plan of service is done by the system, not the library. I do not know of any restrictions on library-specific strategic plans There aren't, or there are? There are. Then I'd like to see that information because that's never been shared with me.
New standards say it has to be a community-based form of service.
Okay.
And you mentioned focus groups. Was that of staff or people in the public?
That was of staff. So,
I think there needs to be some focus groups out in the community.
okay, I'll review those standards.
The number 11.
So then trustee McCarthy asked about what is LEO? That's law enforcement organizations. So that was part of not trying to make it so that when we call for assistance, that we don't always rely on law enforcement, that we create relationships with other community groups, which we've done some of this work, but that we continue to extend it. There's also a question from trustee McCarthy about the $15 an hour goal not being implemented till 2023. We can do it sooner if we find a way to pay for it. And that is some of the work, is doing some outreach to figure out how do we right size the organization so that we can afford to do the work, afford to pay our staff more simultaneously without doing it with a huge budget ask. So those are the questions that I got from emails when the packet was sent out. And I look forward to the board reviewing the work that's been put in front of you and asking more questions at the next board meeting.
Are there any questions for Scott on the plan, or any comments or feedback anybody would like to add or give at this time? So I have a question. I tried going through the plan, and maybe I was reading it wrong, but it seemed that things were in different places. So there were the objectives box, and then the bullet points underneath didn't actually correspond to them. They all seemed out of order in the document, and I had a hard time following it.
Okay, so there are numbers in it. Let me look at it. So there are one, two, yeah. So there'll be numbers that are at the top, which should correspond with the objectives. Then in gray, there's originally, and that's for our staff to reference to make so that they see what those originally were in the framework that they provided us.
But if you look at how they currently are, they don't correspond.
Okay, then we'll review. And if we need to, we'll send them back out. I see what you're saying. So it lists the three. And then, so we just need to go back and map them back to the three listed at the top. That makes sense. We'll do that.
Yeah, because there was one in the second or third box, and I was trying to find more in depth, and I just couldn't find it in the document. I wasn't sure if it was somewhere else or if it was changed.
We'll map it back. We'll figure it out.
I also have a question as well. The strategic plan, but the actions that you have in here, are these supposed to be actions that are not presently being executed now?
No, many of,
Brenda, are you muted? I see Zoom is.
Can you hear me?
Is somebody listening to it? I see the red mic. on
yeah, the
screen, but I don't
box,
know.
the box.
Can you hear me
in
now?
it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now you're lighting up.
Oh, it's gone from your screen. You're not.
Oh, okay. All right. So my question was, with the strategic plan, with the action items that you do have on here, are these supposed to be actions that are not being executed in this plan?
No, some of this is things that we are working on right now, but we want it supported from a board level, not just being done within the administration and the organization. So like any strategic plan, there are things that we can adopt and work towards. But when it's adopted as part of the strategic plan, that shows that it's being asked to be done through governance, so that we're held accountable to making sure that the work is done. So it kind of goes from an initiative to an actual, something that we need to have a tangible outcome. So, we are working on trying not to call law enforcement organizations in every situation where we would call them before. But this is something that we want to really invest time and effort into and really come up with strategies that are basically procedures that we follow later on. Right now, it's more of we're trying to do this, but when it's part of the strategic plan, that really shows that the organization is adopting that this is going to be something we do moving forward.
But these are not things that you feel that you do not have a handle on, such as knowing what to share, what not to share.
I think we have a handle on them. I think some of these are going to take really big investments and time, and we'd really like to be held accountable by the board to make sure these things are happening. So, we report out the strategic plan now to the board. I'd like this to be something that we continually report out to, so that shows we have dedication and also that the board will provide the resources for us to get this work done.
I know I also raised a concern when we spoke earlier in an executive committee that while I do like having a diversity and equity inclusion plan, the strategic plans, I guess, I have experience working with in the past have additional components, finance, infrastructure, capital plan. So I'm not sure if we need to add to this plan, just so we make sure we're including everything if this is going to be the strategic plan for the entire library for the next 3 years. So no, I'm really looking forward to this presentation next month. I think these are absolutely important objectives for the library to work on. I'm just wondering if we might need to add a little bit to this plan. And I also agree with Brenda. I think the library is working on some of these things already. And I don't remember which example I mentioned in our executive committee, something that I thought we were already doing. So maybe some language just needs to be tweaked. Obviously, with any strategic plan, we need to set metrics and what we actually want to do. So I know we need to get tighter with the language as well. But no, this is definitely a good plan. And something I'm definitely interested in seeing the library implement. Does anybody else have any additional questions? Sarah. Sorry, Trustee Dallas.
Can you hear me now? I think that what this plan has, and I am a big fan person of tangible developments for years now. These are almost like actions we should be doing. It's not really the plan. So these are the strategies in the bigger plan. That makes any sense?
That's how we saw it when the information was provided to us. That's what we saw, which was a list of tactics that we thought, if we have this giant list of tactics, then we really need to kind of move this up to the next kind of level, so that you can't have tactics without goals. So I think we're almost reverse, and we did this with the last strategic plan. It's almost reverse engineering the strategic plan.
But you're not switching. You're not getting rid of the old plan.
No, actually,
This will enrich the original plan.
Yeah, this looks what we did was we took kind of the data dump that they provided to us and tried to formulate it into something that looked more like a strategic plan. Because we kind of had a reverse. We had all of this information and all of these, it was a list of tactics. And we said to ourselves, now we have to massage this in a way that speaks to the elevation of governance. Because again, we can do all these tactics, but doing some of these tactics will take large organizational change and an investment by governance to make it so that we could do all this. We're working on some of these things, but to actually have it from handed down from the board, and me being told we need to report on this every quarter and how we're doing it, That's really where strategic management comes into play. And that's why it's important to be part of a strategic plan. New initiatives are great. We do them all the time, but sometimes we don't have follow through because things come up. Whereas if the board has accepted this is how we're moving forward. This is our direction to Scott of how we want the library to be seen. This makes it so that we cannot drop the ball on these things, that we have to keep going, which we did with the last strategic plan.
Just playing off that, what percentage of the previous strategic plan would you say we got through? It was most of it, right?
So we've gone through most of it, or at least implemented most of it. Just remember, you don't always want a conclusion to your goals. Sometimes you have a goal and it becomes a part of your everyday operation. So our hope is we want to do it this month, but Melanie's on vacation. We don't want to do it next month because that'll be awkward to report on how we did the last plan. So my plan is to have in October a report out of where some of the things that we have done over the last strategic plan. A good strategic plan, again, has things that we knock it out of the ballpark. Then has things that just become a part of our everyday operation, like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And sometimes you have things that you abandon or change or you don't succeed at. We may be talking to you about our work with losing the word, sustainability. We're going to have a conversation about our sustainability initiatives and our involvement in the sustainability initiative that is no longer with NILA. So again, from what I've learned, a good strategic plan has successes, has failures, and has things that become a part of everyday operation and things that you just abandon because they're not, environmental changes mean you're not able to do them or they're no longer worth doing. Hopefully that answered your question. I can bring my textbook from my strategic management and strategic planning course.
I think I asked during the executive committee, but I forgot the answer. What is the timeline on this? When are we looking to have a new plan implemented by?
I believe we extended the last plan until the end of this year. So our hope would be to have one in January. That almost never happens with any organization. There's usually a little bit of a lag, but we'd like to start getting this work started at least before the beginning of next year.
So then on the board end, we're probably looking at, we're getting the presentation next month at our September board meeting. And then we're probably looking at creating an ad hoc strategic plan committee and having that committee meet through fall and continue work on this. Okay. And the process of reverse engineering and Trustee Dallas.
I promise this is my last comment. I'm looking at some of this that deal with selection policy. There's no reason why the policy committee can't incorporate this in all of the policies to make sure it's equitable without having to go through the whole process or starting in September and then October. I think this is work that should be started by the committee as soon as possible.
Any other questions or comments in regard to the plan? Thank you everyone for your input, and I look forward to the presentation next month. The next item under new business is proposed hours beginning in September 2021.
So the heads of branches recommended two possible scenarios for hours at all locations beginning Tuesday, September 6th. This returns us to 100% pre-pandemic hours. The first option will shift Sunday hours from Washington Avenue to Arbor Hill West Hill. The second option goes back to our original model of having Washington Avenue open on Sundays. The Washington Avenue branch will still be open at least 55 hours a week as required by New York State standards under central libraries in both scenarios. And both options will have 2 branches open on Sundays. I was surprised not surprised, but it was good to see the heads of branches working on options for the board. I agree with the heads of branches and believe scenario A is the best option for APL at this time. And remember, this is something that can be changed at when the board decides to change it and will be reviewed annually. The staffing and facilities cost savings alone make this option worthy. It also gives us an opportunity to provide services in a different neighborhood on Sundays. Bach being open on Sundays was we were hopeful that it was going to be we were hopeful it was going to be a positive impact, and it was a huge impact. So, we also want to remind the board that Arbor Hill West Hill is still in walking distance from the branch that is traditionally open, this branch. It will save us money. It will improve. We now have a rotation. We're going to a 1 library, 7 branches rotation for weekends. So that means staff are going to be rotating between libraries. What this will do is alleviate the amount of staff that we're going to require staff members to work on a Sunday as well. Trustee McCarthy did email a question about Sunday hours. Concern was, I am open to either option presented, but for now I will flag that access to Arbor Hill by bus is not as easy as Washington Avenue. And I also wonder if all the same services are available at Arbor Hill. If a patron wanted a 3D print or some other unique service, can they still do that? The services provided Sundays at Washington Avenue are limited. The makerspace is not open on the Sunday hours. So all of the services that are done here on Sundays can be replicated at Arbor Hill, West Hill. Those additional services typically don't happen because it would take even more staff to have work on a Sunday. We looked at workflow, we looked at statistics, and Sunday at Washington Avenue was pretty much equal to a busy day at Arbor Hill, West Hill. So that means that the staff and the services there, the amount of computers and space can definitely handle the workflow on Sundays that we experience.
Any questions or comments? Trustee Patera, I think I saw your hand.
Would that indicate, though, that there is a need for Sundays at Washington Ave if a Sunday at Washington Ave is equal to your typical busy day at Arbor Hill West Hill?
I would say that there's a need for Sundays at every branch. And that this is looking at capacity and cost. And I will always say this building is our most expensive building to run. So if we're looking at capacity and cost, Arbor Hills is an attractive option in that regard. We believe we will get traffic that would normally come here. That traffic would go to Arbor Hill. That's why we consider that branch, because it's so close to this location. It is a much cheaper building to run because it's a LEED certified, I believe silver or gold on that one. It's gold because they have a shower. So it's a LEED certified building. It's much less expensive. And there is buses to Arbor Hill, West Hill that are accessible.
I think you guys did a good job with these options that you have, and I'm in favor of giving Arbor Hill an opportunity to be open on Sundays, and the cost savings is also a plus. But I think you guys did a good job on this, on both of the options.
Thank you, Brenda. I will pass that along to the team who put that together.
If there are any more questions or comments, I'll take a motion. Trustee Dallas?
I'll make a motion to accept accept the proposed, to adopt
To adopt which one?
Which one?
the Arbor Hill.
Option A.
Option A, Plan A.
Scenario A for Arbor Hill.
And I second that adoption.
And trustee Dr. Robinson seconds. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we can all go to, trustee Dallas.
And you plan to evaluate this in 6 months?
Yeah, we can do a 6-month evaluation.
Okay.
And we can all go to board docs to vote. Almost. Takes me that long to switch my screen. Yes.
Yes,
And motion carries. Thank you. Next item under new business we have is the 2022 board meeting schedule.
Usually I would hand a couple things off to Melanie, but since she's not here this month, you're all stuck with me. Attached is the proposed 2022 board meeting schedule. Still meeting at 6 p.m., still meeting on the second Tuesday. Following the same schedule that we said yes to last year, which was Washington Avenue and then a branch, Washington Avenue and then a branch. We believe, as we said last year, that this just helps, it helps not interrupt the branches, kind of throws the branches in a tizzy, understandably so. We once kicked out a Dungeons and Dragons team and I heard about it for weeks, so I don't want to do that ever again. So, you know, and it also makes it easier for staff because we're here, we have the equipment here, we don't have to bring that equipment around. I also would suggest that if the pandemic worsens, which it has since the writing of this, and the county is in severe community transmission and open meetings law is still being enforced, then while we're still in severe community transmission, we ask that all meetings be held here because it provides the most amount of space and we can open doors. And then as we come out of severe and things get better, then we can go to the schedule that the board has approved. Did you cough for effect? Oh, God, don't want to ever hear that.
So just to clarify, you're proposing this schedule, but in our current situation in life, we would be meeting at Washington Ave.
Correct. Until we're out of severe and back into, forgot what's under severe.
Me too.
Hi,
Life is always severe.
we're in substantial right now. I thought we were. So once we bounce back to substantial, which we will.
It's not dates. So I was just wondering if that language about, I don't see that language about bouncing back to Washington if the levels change on the actual little sheet. If that could be added, that would be great. And I checked the dates. I'm thinking they're good. Thank you.
I don't think, no, it's not in the continuation of service plan. That's probably where we should have stuck it. Yeah, well, the emergency policy.
Yeah, I'm just looking if someone pulls up this document out of the blue.
Yep.
With that, could we get a motion? And we can do a motion to adopt this with that change. Trustee Patera, motion, and trustee Pyer, seconds. Any further questions or comments? Oh, nope, I can do it again. Tell me when. Trustee Patera motioned and trustee Pryor seconded.
What is the motion going to be? Motion to adopt the 2022 board meeting schedule. Noting,
Adding a note that all meetings may be held at Washington Avenue in the event of a worsening pandemic. COVID 2021. Like that, 21.
I'm not, yeah.
motion to adopt the 2022 board meeting schedule with the exception that all meetings will be held at Washington Avenue branch in the event that CDC guidelines indicate high level.
Should be with the addition, not exception.
Trustee Gray? Trustee Robinson?
Yes.
And the motion is adopted.
Rebecca, we're seeing your control tower.
Motion carries. Next item of business, I believe, is the schedule of service.
Yes.
Okay.
So attached is the 2022 schedule of service, basically holiday closures. The current contract designates several holidays the library is to close, which makes our life easy. The library has the option to add additional days in 2021. We added Juneteenth as a proposed day of closure. This benefited us in two ways. We were recognizing a very important holiday. This also gave us the ability to be at more Juneteenth events doing outreach. One, because it would free up staff to do it, and also staff would be paid holiday time. So staff who decided they did want to participate could. So it worked out very, very well for us. The change to this year is since July 4th and Christmas Day fall on Sundays, we've made those we've made those 3-day weekends. If we don't do that, make some floating holidays, which makes scheduling really, really difficult because then we have 130 people who have an extra day off to take. We've almost always done July 4th. I'm also suggesting Christmas Day, which falls on a Sunday, to be a 3-day weekend. We typically close on Christmas Eve. My hope is that the 2022 Christmas season is a season that we can travel and see family a little bit more. That's me being optimistic, which I know sounds strange. So that would be, we'd already be closed on that Sunday, July 4th. So there, and I always want to note, there is no language in the contract that differentiates weekdays from weekends, which does benefit us, but it also benefits the union in these conversations because they're treated as regular work days. So really the big change from last year's schedule is just an extra day off around Christmas. And I'll note that we were open a Christmas Eve. And we got no business, so.
Is there a motion? Trustee Pryor motions to adopt schedule of service. And trustee Dr. Robinson seconds. Any other questions or comments before we go to a vote? Okay. Give Rebecca a minute to set that up. We don't need to approve the committee assignments, right? That just means that.
It's done by the executive committee.
I was hoping to have a break from talking.
That's like coming back to you in a minute. And motion carries. Next item does not require a vote. We just included the new Board of Trustee committee assignments in the packet, so everybody has them. They will also be posted in board docs for all of your references. And I look forward to working with everyone on the new committees and new chairs. And it's almost like back to school. It's a new year, very exciting. So next item after that, quarterly board evaluation. I believe we need links, correct?
Yeah, it'll be sent out to you.
Okay, thank you. So if everybody can try to do those before we pick up and leave, that would be great. Next item is the POP update.
So the library administration now feels that the Centers for Disease Control are starting to provide clear guidance almost 2 years later and metrics for operating public-facing institutions. Albany Public Library will base operations on the CDC's community transmission metrics moving forward. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at that page. It's definitely interesting. We believe based on the collective experience over the last 18 months, we can continue to provide quality service, library service, while keeping staff and patrons safe. This will mean rolling some things back and then reintroducing them once things become safer. This plan simplifies that was allowed and clear from the Board of Trustees and members of the public that we need to present a less complicated plan, at least to the public, and have some of the complication behind the scenes. So this plan simplifies operations and will make it easier to communicate to staff and public about changes to library services during the pandemic. And this thought process also included vaccinations. We did a survey that was sent to 131 staff members, because that's what we had at the time of the survey, with a response rate of about 58%, which is good for a survey. For those who responded, 76, that's 98% of the respondents are vaccinated, and 3 individuals responded with that they were not vaccinated, though they are interested in being vaccinated in the future. Based on this sample, we believe we have a significant portion of our staff that is vaccinated, allowing us to provide more services than we did during past waves of the pandemics. Trustees should, and this is my warning, should recognize that this plan does not have redundancy scheduling. So what this will mean is if we do have a positive case within one of our branches, this is currently happening at Queens Public Library a lot. I think there are 2 branches have closed over the last 2 weeks. This will mean that if we have someone who is positive or exposed, we will have to quarantine all of the staff at that branch. And that may mean a week of having that branch closed. That's the big difference. That's what we're doing that other libraries did over the last year. That was different than us, but it gives us the ability to be open almost full hours. If approved, the library administration is asking for 14 days to follow the metrics before adjusting library service, kind of like we did in the past, and to do that moving between all phases. Basically, the clock would start tomorrow. Stephanie is my backup. We both look at the CDC page every day and are keeping track. So if we stay in the level red in which we are right now for the next 14 days, that means that we will be reducing the amount of public seating, not allowing programming inside, reducing almost everything, but still allowing people to browse and still be open all of the hours that were open, and still allowing for transactions like navigator passes, faxing, copy services. It'll look a little different, but that'll keep us within the 55 hours the state is asking for the entire district to be open, and the 55 hours that we're being asked to be open for central library service. So we'll be meeting all the demands of Department of Library Development, providing services, not cutting back hours, just cutting back some of the things that are allowed to be done in our building. And then there's an adjustment to the safety plan as well. That's just following the CDC guidance now on vaccinated individuals who are exposed. CDC is saying that if someone was to be exposed, but they're vaccinated, they should get tested immediately, whereas before they did not ask for that. Basically, we'll be asking them not to come to work, but not shutting down the full branch until we know that they're actually a positive. And we know from the county's announcement today, that's been happening a lot more in Albany than expected.
Trustee Dallas?
I just want to make sure there's enough people in each. What I'm concerned about is the number of people who are in the branch. So if there's somebody sick, I'd like to have at least 4 people in each branch at all times.
Yeah, in the plan, there's a metric of percentage of staff that'll be in the building, but it'll never be lower than 3 or 4 people. By not allowing, by putting a pause on in programming, that gives us space in the program room to set up our staff. So in other words, there will always be 4 people in the branch, and that may fluctuate throughout the day. And some of those individuals may be in the meeting room at their desk in the meeting room, socially distanced from everybody else. But we don't really see a huge reduction in the amount of staff in the building. We just need to repurpose study rooms and meeting rooms to provide socially distanced workspaces like we did in the past. And this allows them to rotate out. So in other words, no one is at a public service desk for an extended period of time. We rotate everybody around. It's not perfect, but it is the best middle ground to providing services, protecting staff and patrons without shutting down again.
Any other questions or comments? Then I will take a motion. Motion by trustee Dr. Robinson. Is there a second? Second by trustee Wei. Any further questions or comments on the motion? Okay. And the motion carries. Next, we're going to go to our second public comment of the meeting. Thank you, Rebecca. We don't need an executive session. So next, I think we're going to go to our new agenda item, which I called housekeeping. And I'm going to explain what I would like to use this section for. I think creating the committee descriptions last year was a really helpful way of passing institutional knowledge. For those of us who have served on the board for a few years now, we often switch committees. This is my fifth board on the committee, or fifth year on the Board of Trustees, and I'm actually on a new committee this year. So what I would like to do going forward is have this housekeeping section at the end of each board meeting, where each committee chair plans on stating whether or not they're planning to hold a committee meeting prior to the next full board meeting. The committee descriptions can help in this decision since certain tasks of each committee must occur in certain months and they're marked in the committee descriptions. I'm hoping that this will help us all stay on top of our committee work and give us an opportunity to plan for committee meetings with ample time before the next board meeting. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot tonight since everyone just got their committee assignments. I believe we still need committee descriptions from the Policy and Governance Committee as well as the Nominations Committee, if both of those committees would like to discuss meeting offline and after this meeting. So going forward, committee chairs, if you could just be prepared to say whether or not you anticipate having a committee meeting before the next board meeting, that would be really helpful. The second housekeeping item, just a reminder, if any trustee needs assistance with a password reset for board docs or help with anything concerning Google Drive or finding board documents, please direct all inquiries to Rebecca Delgazo. Rebecca serves as our board clerk and goes to great lengths to keep us all organized. She really does. Next, I'll be emailing everyone a survey asking for input regarding topics for our board retreat. Please respond as soon as possible. I promise it will only be a 1-question survey. And then lastly, please complete the quarterly evaluation before we all leave tonight. And that is all I have for housekeeping.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
In regards to housekeeping, if someone or a trustee needs something to be added to housekeeping, do you give them the option to add that to housekeeping, or you open it up, or how will that work?
Good question. I have not thought of that, but I think housekeeping can just be open like we do trustees report out earlier in the agenda. So I'm completely open to opening housekeeping up. If anybody else has any other housekeeping item, sometimes I get, because I also serve on the Friends and Foundation board, they ask me to pass things along to trustees. Sometimes I'll pass them along in email. Sometimes I'll announce them at meetings. So yes, feel free. If anybody, any other trustees have anything you want under housekeeping, we can go around. Good question. Thank you. Trying to get back to the right screen. Any other questions or comments or anything? Otherwise, I believe we are looking for our last motion of the evening. Trustee Vitera.
I'd like to move to adjourn.
Thank you. And Trustee Pryor with a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we can all go to board docs. Trustee Pryor. And the motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Excellent.
Well done, Sarah.
Record time.